the E. E. Cummings that Rorschach read so beautifully, but I'm not the whole thing, and you don't need all things, In just spring, when the world is mud luscious, the little lame balloon man whistles far and wee, and Eddie and his Bill or something, and Billy and I don't know, anyway, the kids, and Eddie and Bill come dancing from hopscotch and jump rope. And it's spring. Anyway, I may try to sing that to you another time, but I just remember, actually, I write lots of songs, but this one happens to be my brother wrote, and I sang it everywhere with a whole bunch of songs by E. E. Cummings, whom I just adore. Wonderful, wonderful poet. I am in mourning for two very beautiful people. One is the Reverend Dr. Dorsey Blake, who died 3 weeks ago, and we had his memorial on Saturday. And on that day, David Hartsaw died, a wonderful activist, a wonderful soul, just somebody that we're so grateful to have had in the world, both of them. Just wonderful, wonderful. So I wrote for Dr. Dorsey, I wrote a poem right after I heard of his death 3 weeks ago. And a lot of it is very appropriate for either of these beautiful, beautiful people. On the passing of Reverend Dr. Dorsey Blake, Church for the Fellowship of All Peoples. A great spirit has passed who offered his life to his God. His last thoughts, those of angels and the mystical knowledge that we are always visited. We live in a world that seems sometimes too large for our diverse paths to merge and separate, unique and yet united. We walk together over a great bridge of love, over a vastness we cannot understand, yet find in touch, in thought and heart, that we all are one. Okay, so that's my first poem. And that's a little hard for me, but let's see if I can find the other one. I was going to do one I wrote on the Shinnecock women of Long Island who have for centuries nurtured the kelp and kept the waters clean there in the Bay of Shinnecock. So if I can find my poem. Yeah, I'm not finding it. I may have to read that next week. So this is from my book, The Earth Turns. And I will read Roof. The sky is marbled softly white, a foggy veil drawn over blue, waiting to dissipate through sun-soaked rags of moisture, light, delicate, discarded doilies crocheted by wind and rain, placed once upon tiled roofs, now standing damp, aloof, as if expecting 4 o'clock tea, interrupted by the wind, blustering uninvited in, with leaves piled chattering, in breakout nattering groups, discussing all the summer scoops of news on viruses and things, of riots, cabbages, and kings, then drifting noisily away to circle back another day, while sky and doilies mark the time, and evening settles with a rhyme. This may seem familiar to you in the sense of isolation that was visited upon all of us during the time of the pandemic. And there is a mention of viruses and cabbages and kings, as if it's just a part of our world, but our world was very siloed. I'm going to read this because I think it seems also it takes in the whole world. Tribes of the Torah and beyond. We remember Adam and Eve, Abraham and Sarah and Hagar, Isaac and Rebekah, daughter of Bethuel, who lived childless 20 years until she bore twins. Esau and Jacob. This is how it was written, but this is a little, I know this is not exactly the way we remember it. Esau first, because Hagar, of course, it was her servant woman who bore Hagar, but was written here as if they were both hers. Very strange. Esau first, while Jacob held the heel of his foot. Esau born to hunt and work the land, Jacob to cultivate the gardens at home. Esau came home from work hungry. Jacob brought him pottage in return for Esau's birthright. Dressed as Esau in hirsute skins, received his father's blessing, fled to his uncle Laban to avoid Esau's wrath, where he met Rachel and Leah and loved Rachel. 8 years worked to win Rachel's hand, yet was deceived and received Leah as his wife. From Leah he had 4 boys, Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah. Later more children from Rachel and their maidservants. From Levi came Moses and Aaron, and from Judah's offspring through Rebekah came Solomon, David, and Jesus. And from other offspring of Jacob and Rebekah came lost tribes, lost as detached migrants, wandering souls, remnants of history tucked in rags of wisdom, carpets of a lost people, a floor for civilization and persecution, carpets of history and genius upon which the prophets descended from Judah, David, Solomon, and Jesus strew seeds of Western civilization, spiritual paths, music, and art, together with the legacy of Africa, journeying through the Mediterranean to tangle all DNA of Homo sapiens and Neanderthal, all with stories of man made from earth, joined through fibers and roots, stories from Africa, Asia, Iceland, Siberia, the New World, lakes and oceans giving birth to humankind and all life, civilization and sorrow. So that came from doing so many different readings of the similar stories, and you realize how many stories we have that have been manipulated, changed through the generations and even through the texts. So I just found that kind of interesting. That's why I wrote that. And I thank you all. I think that's enough for me today. Thank you, bless you, and be happy during this windy time as we move into springtime.